And this will be a follow-up to our episode 16 about the Acts corruptions in passages at chapter 15, verse 24, and Acts 21:25, which we dealt with in February. We're going to give you a link to all these prior episodes at the end or in the description. Anyway, let me read the title of this episode today. The NKJV footnotes to Acts 15:24 and Acts 21:25 show the corruptions from the 10th to the 11th century Christian era. I'm going to pause there. So what they're going to do is go through, I've showed you in the prior episode that 8.5% of the words in the King James Bible of the book of Acts were added in the 10th and 11th century. Almost 10% of the book of Acts in the King James Bible, 800 words, were not there. I'll show you the scholarly proof of that in a second. And so this was now basically exposed and corrected in the Greek text. So now we'll continue with the title. Corrected in the Greek text by Nestle Aland. So this is a modern book, and it's in its 28th edition now currently, and in the United Bible Society's 3rd edition of the Bible, abbreviated as NU. So these combined together, their corrections is called NU. And so let me just show you how this is the example of this, the two examples here. The NKJV 1524 in a footnote gives you this notice. Here's the NKJV title. It was issued in 1982. And this is what it says, Acts 15:24, New King James Version. That's at BibleGateway.com. So if you want to see these textual corruptions, that 8.5% that were added corruptly, I presume they've done this for all of the corruptions. They'll be footnoted in all of them. So this is how it reads. And the text inside of this red square is the corrupted text. It shouldn't be there, according to Nestle Aland and the American Bible Society. Since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your souls, to whom we gave no such commandment. That's how it really reads. But if you put this in here, unsettling your souls, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. See the difference? This change makes it all be antinomian, anti-Torah. The law wasn't to be extended to Gentiles, which would be a tragedy because I remember Isaiah 56 verses 6-7 says God is talking about the millennial kingdom. And he says, I'm going to welcome into my holy mountain, a passage Jesus actually quotes in his throwing out the money changers. He says, I'm going to welcome to my holy mountain and my house of prayer all those Gentiles who do what? Two things. They keep my Shabbat from profaning it, right? And they have to keep steadfast the covenant. And the covenant is the Ark of the Covenant, which are the 2 tablets of stone that were put in the Ark of the Covenant. So that was the requirement for salvation's sake. That doesn't mean that's all the commandments that apply to Gentiles. For blessings and cursings, there are other commandments you should and must keep. If you don't want to have curses, you want to have blessings. But that's a whole nother category. And of course, we need to follow the words of Jesus now that are salvific in their nature. But anyway, so you can see this had a corrupt intent to give you a doctrine that would fit more likely with Paul. And also the Roman Catholic Church was extremely antinomian, meaning anti-Torah. They made it even a curse in the 360s at the Council of Laodicea. If you kept the Shabbat, you were cursed and you'd be excommunicated. It was that horrible to them because, of course, they're under the pagan rulership from Constantine. Even after he died, his family was still pagan, and they all were carrying forward the mission that was pagan and keeping it secret from the poor Christians who were basically stupid and dumb. But they should have known in 337 when Constantine dies, he puts out a coin, a consecration coin to commemorate his death. It says he's Divus Constantinus, he's Guy Constantine. But I digress. Let's now look at the next example, Acts 21:25. New King James Version will show you this. And I'm going to read it to you without the fraud that happened in the 10th and 11th century. But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. But then if you put in the fraud from the 10th and 11th century, it says, but concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided they should observe no such thing. Basically, in the prior sentence was the law, that they should do no such thing except these limited commandments, which makes no sense in the original context of Acts 15, by the way, because Acts 15 says these commands: don't eat meat sacrificed to idols, don't eat meat with blood, don't eat things that have been strangled, and keep yourself from sexual immorality. Right after that, he says, for the Sabbath, at Sabbath, the law would be read weekly, and that way he's saying they will learn more as they go. We're not going to dump all the commandments on them now. We're just going to tell them these basic few for the start, and then the law of Moses will be read each week. That's when Acts 15 follows these commands. So obviously James is saying we don't need to give them a whole bunch of stuff now. Just these minimal commands will start off. But when you change it this way and corrupt it the way it was corrupted in the 10th and 11th century, what does it say? They should have observe no such thing except that they keep these four little laws. Okay, not fornication is a little law, but well, this is not a little law. The eating meat sacrificed to idols is a big law. That's not like clean unclean meat. That's like verboten meat. Anyway, so this is how the New King James Version handles it. And what I'm indicating is we'll show you 10%, 8.5% to be precise, 800 new words were added in the 10th and 11th century to the book of Acts. As a result of that, you have to be notified of corruptions, and that basically Nestle Aland is not going to go along with them, and you'll get notified by the NKJV if you want to be notified what's going on. All right, so now let me explain one detail here. So where it says here, NU omits that they should observe no such thing. What is that about? See that NU? Well, NU is explained in the preface to the NKJV. This is the 1982 edition online. You can buy this at books.google.com for $9.99. The preface to the New King James Version. By the way, the King James Bible was authorized, or the king authorized I think it was Cambridge and Oxford, either one of them, they can do this themselves independently, apparently. They can go and update the King James Bible, and that's what's happening here, okay? So they're still exercising that power that was authorized by the King's Acts of 1600s. NU, text, what does that mean? These variations from the traditional text generally represent the Alexandrian or Egyptian type of text described previously in the New Testament text. They are found in the critical text published in the 27th edition of the Nestle Aland Greek New Testament, but today we're up to 28th, and in the United Bible Society's 4th edition U, hence the acronym NU text. This was at page 6 of the book, copyright 1982. Next, I want to show you if you want to actually buy the latest edition. Again, it's the Nestle Aland Novum Testamentum Graece, $99. Sorry, that's if you want to buy the digital Verbum edition, but you can buy it at Logos, presumably for the similar price. And I don't know, this is a German publisher, so I'm not sure this is where you want to get it from. But anyway, I'm going to play a video for you at the end, a small minute clip where there's an advertisement from this page of what the benefit of having the Logos version of the Novum Testamentum Graece. And one of the benefits is you can actually see these variants and then be on alert. So if you're not looking at the NKJV, you would see it over here if you look at this Bible in the electronic version from Logos. Now, I want to show you, let me also indicate something here, is this book, the Nestle Aland, I researched it, and the ESV uses it. So you will see, as a result, the ESV complies with the Nestle Aland and United Bible Society's Bible. So here is the New King James Version. Here's the text that was the 10th and 11th century corruption, and you will notice it's not here anymore. Since we have heard some persons have gone out from us and troubled you with words, unsettling your minds, although we gave them no instructions, etc., right? That is very different from, since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with your words, unsettling your souls, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. I mean, this is a fundamentally changed out, completely Pauline doctrinal statement that will definitely insulate him. You see the difference. That's what's going on here. But that was not Luke's, these were not Luke's words, let's put it that way. Same thing here. We see the ESV does a good job of cleaning things up, but then you don't know there was a corruption ever. So people live in la la land. Oh, the Bible's never been corrupted. Well, the 1611 King James Bible is what we're talking about, is been corrupted. But the New King James is finally 1982, almost 400 years later, changing it to fix it so it doesn't read bad anymore. So here's the ESV of Acts 21:25. So let's read that. But as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. Okay, so, but if you read the way it was in the 10th century and 11th century corruptions, it reads differently. But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should observe no such thing, except So what commandments they have to follow are only these. That's what the implication is, that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, and from things strangled, and from sexual morality. As I said, this is Acts 21. James is repeating this to Paul at another separate time. He's trying to say, we've heard rumors you're an apostate. He uses that word in Greek, apostasia. We've heard you're an apostate. We want you to reassure us that you're not. And he then repeats to him the commandments that had been given to the Gentiles in Acts 15. But the problem in it is this doesn't make sense if you read this back into Acts 15, because the next line in Acts 15 after these commandments is James says, the Gentiles will hear the word, because in the book of Moses has been read each week, it's Sabbath, and that will continue. So he's saying they're going to learn more. And that's another thing. Nobody reads that verse. It's just, they blank it out of their mind. But that is the key explanation. These were not the only commandments you'd ever have to believe. And if James didn't say it right, he would be, if he didn't put that appendage in there that you're going to learn more, what a crime. He would have not given salvation message. He would not have made the salvation message available to the Gentiles that Jesus quoted and cited in Isaiah 56 verses 6-7. I'm going to repeat it again. There, Yahweh tells Isaiah, I will welcome into my holy mountain those Gentiles who do not defile my Sabbath and keep my covenant. The steadfastly keep my covenant. Covenant again, in that time period when he's speaking, it's about the covenant was known as the covenant Sinai, which everyone swore an oath at the end, which was the 10 commandments. That's why it's called the covenant. And then the covenant was put in the 2 tablets of stones was put in the Ark of the Covenant, the box. And that tells you the 10 commandments were considered different and highly special. And that's why they went in the box, not all the other commandments that came later. So salvific questions for Gentiles are specifically those at the time Isaiah wrote. Now, of course, God Yahweh said, I'm going to send a special prophet. He'll be the prophet. That's Deuteronomy 18. And that person you must obey. Peter quotes that in Acts 3, 23, 24. And that's different. And so Jesus can add to the qualifications of what is required for salvation, in my opinion. Like the demand for charity is not in the 10 commandments necessarily. It's not obvious. And that would be something Jesus made absolutely mandatory in the parable of the sheep and the goats, where if you don't do that, you will be sent to the same place the devil and his angels goes. So you have to do charity to those less fortunate than you, both strangers and or the brothers and sisters in the fellowship. If you know they're without food, water, and clothing, can't let that happen. You have to help your fellow man. Okay, so anyway, this is the reason I tell you this is if you want, you can now read the ESV and you're going to be reading it clean of all that fraud, supposedly, I assume. But on the other hand, if you read the NKJV, you can find out, if you pay attention to this little A, you just can't ignore that, and go down and look in the Bible Gateway, you will see those footnotes and you'll be able to realize what has been added and what has been corrupted in the book of Acts. Now, let me remind you how we know the book of Acts has been corrupted. It's beyond doubt. The book of Acts in the first century setting, volume 1, ancient literary setting, edited by Bruce Winter and Andrew Clark. This is a academic type book. Grand Rapids, Michigan, William Erdsman's 1993. Okay. And in there, it explains, there's an appendix by Peter Head called Acts and the Problem of its Text, page 291 and following. I recommend, by the way, this is available online. I do think it's kind of on the expensive side. I think it was $42. But if you really want to know about this, this is what you've got to do. You got to dig your head. You've got to put your head into some of these things sometimes to learn. 800 more words right here. 800 more words are in these later texts. Let me show you how we found out. So we have texts that we found in the 1800s that were an earlier version in the 300s or middle 400s, and that's the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus. Sinaiticus is a complete copy of the New Testament as we know it today, or with a couple of extra works. Shepherd of Hermas and the Epistle to Barnabas are also in there. And then there's the Vaticanus. These primary representatives, what they call the Alexandrian text, meaning something that came out of Egypt, but technically the works may not be from Alexandria, but that's a whole other issue. So when you compare these texts with what we have later in the 10th and 11th century, how much is the difference? A commonly cited comparison suggests that the Western text, that's what we can see from the 10th and 11th century text, is 8.5% longer than the Alexandrian text. Okay, so when you add up all the words that reflects, you're talking about a lot of words. Okay, it's virtually 10%. So Robertson's book notes, for example, says the text of the Acts, a special problem arises concerning the text of Acts inasmuch as the Codex D, with somewhat other Western support, is, centuries later, presents a great many additions to the neutral Alexandrian text of the Aleph, A, B, C. So these are the various texts. So we've got a very systematic revision and rewrite that you can see when you see the other texts. Okay, what explains that? It's because you can just see the bias, the purpose of these changes are to make it more that there's no law other than these 3 commands or 4 commands. And that's clearly going to support one type of text, the Pauline corpus. So these are Pauline Christians are going in and modifying the book of Acts so it would be more consistent with what they wanted. But even when they made their corruptions, as I showed you, they don't fit anything. They make a mess of it because definitely in the book of Acts, James gives them several commands, and then he says, but they'll be hearing the readings of the book of Moses each week, and he's implying that's how they're going to know more as they go along. And if we go to page 292-93 of Peter Head's article or appendix, it says this: it was in several ways the pioneering work of Johann Jakob Griesbach, which spelled the beginning of the end for the Textus Receptus. He's the one who put together this material and counted up all the differences, and you can just go, wait a minute, that Textus Receptus that Erasmus created from manuscripts that were post 1100s, 1200s, 1300s, that's what he was doing. He didn't have anything earlier, or he wasn't using anything earlier. He's looking at texts that have been way, way changed from what we then found and discovered in the 1800s by going to monasteries, basically, that were from an earlier time, that were repositories of the original versions or much more original texts. If you ask the scholars what was the basis of the King James Bible, they're going to say the Textus Receptus. That means the text that was corrupted after the 1100s. Okay, so that's the problem with the text that we're relying upon when we read the King James Bible. We are reading something in the book of Acts in particular that was modified to shape and create a false narrative that wasn't there in the first place. That if you'd read it properly, you wouldn't have had this view. Let me show you how you can see it yourself that there was a corruption in a much later time period. So this is Acts 15 with the corruption, right? Here's Acts 15 without the corruption. And then you're going to see after these several things that they're told to do, the Gentiles will have to do. He then says, keep from pollution of idols, from sexual immorality, things strangled from blood. Because of, from ancient generations, Moses has had in every city those who proclaim him, because he is read aloud in the synagogues every Sabbath. So why would he say this? Because he's saying, I'm only going to put this. We should not trouble them other than these things for now. And initially, for from ancient generations, Moses in every city, those who proclaim him, and because he's read aloud in the synagogues every Sabbath. There's always a Torah reading. There's a prophet reading, and there'll be a Torah reading. And so why should we have to put these things all on them now? That's what he's saying. We're not going to trouble him, not going to put a mountain of things on him now. So he's very sensitive that it could be a negative thing if you tell someone, you've got to keep all these laws, and you start listing them all off. You say, you know what, you're going to learn as you go along. That's what he's doing. He's a very wise person. Now compare this wisdom with Acts 21. How could this be the ruling and then this be the ruling restated by the same person who spoke in Acts 15? This is James again, same Bishop of Jerusalem, saying that basically, but concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should observe no such thing except, in other words, they don't have to do anything except that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, no idol meat, don't eat that, don't eat meat with the blood in it, don't eat things strangled, and keep from sexual immorality. So why would he say this, that they should have done no such thing, except when he's clearly here reflecting that they're going to learn more? I'm not going to trouble them with a lot of stuff, just these several commands initially, but they're going to hear it every week. The law proclaimed, read aloud in the synagogues every Sabbath. And he's therefore reminding us, dumb Gentiles, oh yeah, Isaiah 56 verses 6 to 7 says, our salvation, as Jesus quoted this very passage, that my temple will be a house of prayer for all nations. God is going to have in the millennial kingdom. If you go back to Isaiah chapter 11, you'd see this all connects together. In this millennial kingdom where there's the animals, the sheep and the lamb sit by side with the wolf, in that period of time, God says, if you want to enter into that period of time, my holy mountain, you have to keep the Shabbat. You have to also have been keeping the Shabbat, and you also have to have kept my covenant. The 10 Commandments is what is stated there as of Isaiah. Again, the prophet can amend those things because he's the prophet, and that's a whole nother topic. But the point is this, is there is a definite mismatch between the way this reads about they're going to hear the word of God, of the Torah each week, and the Sabbath services that completely James is obviously intending they go to. That's a no-brainer. That's like a impossible thing you wouldn't even know. You don't even have to state that. That's a given. You see that as an assumption. He's just assuming you have to do that, right? But this doesn't match that. What this is saying, you have to do nothing except these commands. That means you don't even have to do Sabbath, and that's very important. In a post-abrogation of Sabbath by the Catholic Church, they made it you're cursed if you keep Sabbath. That's the Council of Ediition 363. This was their ruling that you would be a Judaizer. Okay, so took all these pejoratives that Paul had said and now made it law because that's what their pagan rulers wanted. They wanted the day of the sun to be the day that people worshipped and rested, no longer on Sabbath. And Constantine's order at 325 AD was at the Nicene Conference, in the Bishop's Conference or letter afterwards, you must have nothing in common, date-wise, meaning celebrations, in common with the Jews. And that therefore was another nail in the coffin to keeping Sabbath anymore and following God's word in Isaiah 56, verse 6 to 7. All right. The episode you have been watching is from a series entitled The Mistranslations to Help Paul. This is episode 17. I'll fill in the data when I'm done with this filing or uploading. And when you go to the description of the video, you can actually look up any one of these 17 episodes in the series. You'd see the title on the left, episode number on the episode column. You'll see the running time, the length of time, the live URL, the date it was released, in case that's of any interest to you. So the last episode we've done in this series was on February 8, 2024, and this episode 17 directly relates to the content of that prior episode. So use this if you wish to navigate to other episodes that are of interest in this topic area. So I'll get back to the quote we did in the prior episode of what the point of all of this is, and this is explained by Peter Head. He talks about Acts 21:25. It was part of a 10th century systematic corruption reflected in Acts 15:24 and Acts 21:25. Let's read this. Then Peter Head makes a conclusion about the purpose shared behind alterations in 15:24 and 21:25. He says this: the evidence adduced suggests that the false Western text, I've added the word false, but he's saying it's false, Western text must be understood as a thoroughgoing attempt to address the question of Gentile Torah observance. He's talking about the King James text, just so we're clear here, in a more decisive manner than the Alexandrian text allows. So this other text, which is older, shows what it was earlier, shows it's not, these are false changes later. The focus is not on table fellowship and food laws, but quite specifically upon the place of Torah in the life of believing Gentiles, and the answer is given is negative. And if that were true, you would have the New Testament, or even the book of Acts, or whatever you want to say, is contrary to what? Isaiah 56, verses 6 to 7. So just from knowing Isaiah 56, 6 to 7, you know that this is a false addition, a corruption, because it would teach a Gentile not to do exactly what they need to do to be saved according to Isaiah 56, 6 to 7. A different level of holiness was always specified for Gentiles, just so you know. That's why they're called sojourners and strangers. Let me continue. The false Western form, that's the King James Version, of the decree emerges as a Christian ethical document plainly stating total freedom from Torah. Wow. See? And that's not how it works. That was a corrupt pagan ruler, Constantine, who set us on this false path because he had delusions. He was God the Son in the sky, and I've showed you that in episodes where we talk about his consecration coin, the coin that had to be issued on his death. He specified he would be called Divis, God, Constantine. Okay, that'll end this episode. Just to remind you, you can get this material from Mr. Head, his appendix to the book entitled The Book of Acts in Its Ancient Literary Setting. His appendix is called Acts and the Problem of Its Texts. This is in volume 1 of the book. You'll find his appendix at pages 415 and 444. That would be in the print text. The electronic text, it was page 291, 292, if you recall. It was above. And this was available, or is available electronically, for $42. All right. God bless. I hope this helps everyone. Take care. Ciao. Bye.